Increasing the organic sales of your e-commerce website is always a nice thing to have. So let's talk about how we can boost that even more using SEO. Hello everyone, my name is Paul Carey and I'm an SEO consultant here at Launch Site Boost. And in today's video, I want to talk to you about 20 different things that you can do on your website in regards to SEO that will help you boost your organic e-commerce sales. The first thing I want to talk about is your keyword research, because if you're going to increase the SEO and organic visitors to your website, you need to know what kind of keywords and terms that those particular people are searching every single month. Now, we recently did a video all about keyword research, how to go through it fully from start to finish to find the exact keywords that your ideal website visitor is searching. If you do want to have a look at that, I'll leave a link for it in the description below. Now, we're putting keyword research here at the start because it is the foundation of any great SEO campaign, because you do need to know the exact keywords that your ideal website visitor is searching. Many people actually make the mistake of just guessing what these keywords are, and usually it's not exactly what you would think. Especially if you're so involved in the company and the business every single day, you know certain terms and terminology that people might use. However, your ideal audience, someone that's actually looking for the product that you can actually provide to them, they might not use the exact same terms. So it's extremely important to start any good SEO campaign with great keyword research. Moving on to section 2, and that's to include 5 bullet points about your product in your product description. Now, if you ever want to see an example of somewhere that this works incredibly well, have a look at almost any product that's listed on Amazon. Now, the way that these should be actually laid out as bullet points is you should have a feature, more than likely in bold, followed by a benefit. So your feature is going to be just a small amount of words, and then your benefit is the actual explanation of why that particular feature is useful to you in your life, how it can save you time, and how it solves a particular problem. An example in this case may be for something such as the new iPhone. One of the features they mention is longer battery life. So again, there's that small amount of words, longer battery life, and then the actual benefit is you don't have to recharge your phone as much. You're able to talk more on the phone. You're able to watch more things on YouTube. You can stream things constantly and a lot more. That's the benefit that somebody gets from having longer battery life. So always have feature followed by why that feature is a benefit. Section 3 is to optimize your images for web and for actual search purposes. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do with the images on your website, not to only look appealing, but to also then please search engines and to show up to more people, because the search engines will be able to actually get signals and ranking factors from those particular images that you have. Now, we do have a separate video that dives a bit deeper into all of these, but the things that you should kind of be looking out for is the file name itself before it's uploaded to your website. Make sure there's important keywords in there that are relevant. The image alt tag, so when it is uploaded to your website, that you have some nice description that's behind the scenes essentially of that particular website that either a search engine can see or if the image fails to load. And also make sure that your image is also sized correctly. Now, I mean that from the actual size that it takes to load, but also the proportions of what particular size that image is going to be on your website. And speaking of images that load fast, that actually brings me on to number 4, which is to make sure that your website does load fast. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can do to make sure that your website does actually load fast for someone when they're trying to find or buy a particular product on your website. And one of those is images like I've just mentioned. Now, there's a few other things as well with images. You could do the likes of lazy loading, meaning that if an image is further down the page, that it won't actually start to load until somebody begins to scroll, meaning that the actual page itself will load a lot faster. Now, this is important because Google are actually looking at the speed of your website. And if you want to see the exact results that Google themselves have about your website, they actually have a free tool. It's called the Page Speed Insights. You can put any website into the world into that particular tool, the Page Speed Insights, and you'll see the results of what Google think in regards to what that page currently loads in regards to time. You'll also be able to see on the Page Speed Insights a couple of things that Google think that you'll be able to optimize better. They'll actually tell you this is what you need to do better. Here's a particular section or here's a particular image that needs to be a bit more optimized. They actually give all of this to you. And again, that is on the Page Speed Insights. And actually sticking with Google free tools, that brings us to number 5, because you want to make sure that your website is mobile optimized. Now, in today's day and age, the majority of people are looking at your website on a mobile device, meaning a smaller screen. Now, usually most e-commerce platforms kind of out of the box, really, they come optimized for web. They have what's known as responsive website design, meaning that the website will actually squish and optimize based on the actual size of the screen that somebody is looking at it on. But as I said, there is a free tool by Google to actually check this. Now, your website might look like it's okay on a mobile device, but does it pass Google's tests? So Google have yet another free tool that will allow you to actually check if it passes their mobile friendly test. And if you want to check that, just very simply Google mobile friendly test, and it's going to be the first result that comes up. Now, if you do have a Google Search Console account as well, which you should do if you have any website in the world, well, if there is any mobile issues on your website, Google will actually send you emails to let you know about this so that you can resolve them as soon as possible. Number 6 is to write enticing titles and descriptions. So your title and description is actually what shows up in a Google search result. So this is where you have the opportunity to let people know why they should click on you. Now, we've talked about this in several other videos, but basically in a nutshell, your title should have the main primary keyword that you're trying to target, followed by a feature or benefit if you can fit it in, because again, you only have about 60 characters to play with here, followed by your branding. Always put the branding at the end. Whereas your meta description, you've a bit more to play with here. You have about 160 characters or so. So again, the formula that we always follow is start with a question, followed by some features and benefits, and end with a call to action. So it could be, are you looking for product XYZ? And then product XYZ from us with free delivery and great reviews and happy customers, all that sort of stuff. See our full range today. So again, you've got a question, features, benefits, and then you've also got a call to action. So they're the main things that you're going to have in your titles and descriptions. Now, the reason that I'm bringing up titles and descriptions is because so many websites still do not have these optimized, and it's one of the simplest basic parts of SEO is to optimize your titles and descriptions. Now, bear in mind that Google will actually try to make their own titles and descriptions if you haven't written any, and in some cases, even if you have written your own titles and descriptions, Google will try in some way to make their own titles and descriptions because they're always running tests. However, they have said and confirmed that what you write in a title, whether they use it or not, they do use that as a ranking factor. So this is why it's incredibly important to still use your titles and descriptions. Number 7 is to optimize for out-of-stock products. Now, there's a few different ways that you can do this. One of the first ways is you can actually have some structured data on your site to let someone know even before they even click onto your website that the product is out of stock. However, some people don't like to do that because even if you don't list that, you can still get someone onto your website and you can optimize that website in regards to the product they're looking for to say, instead of buy now or add to cart button, that button would then be replaced with out of stock, but then that person can say notify me, and then they just give their email address essentially, and then you'll be able to notify them when that product is back in stock. So they're in your ecosystem regardless of if they buy that from you or not. So that means that in the future, if you ever have a sale or have related products, that you can let them know about it. Now, some other things that you can do with out of stock products, and the reason that I'm going to bring this up here is because in most cases, if they're not optimized,
it will lead to a 404 error or a dead link.
Now look, we did a video recently all about dead links, how you can find them, how you can resolve them. But in regards to e-commerce websites, this is most certainly the biggest culprit, is that the website is set to automatically show a dead link if the product is out of stock. Now there's a few different ways that you can actually resolve this, but what we would recommend is that if a product is out of stock, that you should redirect that particular URL to the next category up. So let's say, for example, that you have a few different categories and subcategories. You're in clothing, then you're in men's clothing, then you're in men's t-shirts, and you're in men's black t-shirts, like I have on here. Now, if someone clicks on that men's black t-shirts, but you have it out of stock, what you can do is you can actually tell your website that if it's out of stock, redirect it to the next category up, which in this case is men's t-shirts. And if you have no men's t-shirts at all in stock, you can tell your website to redirect to the following category or the higher category, which was men's clothing or whatever I mentioned earlier. So that's one thing that you should most certainly do, because it means someone isn't going to a dead link on your website, but also a search engine is not going to a dead link on your website. And number 8 is to not neglect your heading tags. Now, unfortunately, this is something that we still see as quite an issue on a lot of e-commerce websites. Now, there is some platforms out there that by default, they'll actually make your product name or the product title, they'll actually make that a H1. But there's still some websites, and depending on the platform and the team that you've used on that platform, it may not actually include that as a H1. Now look, this is important because your H1 heading tag is the most important heading tag on the page in regards to a search engine. They will see this as they're crawling your website. In some cases, if you don't have a H1 at all, they don't have a signal, they don't have another ranking factor that you're giving them about information on the page. So what you should do is always ensure that all of your products have a H1 on the page itself, which describes in just a couple of words what the product is. So again, if it's men's black t-shirt, then that's what the H1 should be. It should be men's black t-shirt. Moving on to section 9, and that's actually use blogs for your top of funnel marketing. Now, again, with e-commerce websites, a lot of people think that it just makes sense to go for bottom of funnel keywords such as buy t-shirt, buy iPhone, where to buy XYZ. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those keywords can convert, but you want to be writing content for every single stage of the funnel. So if, for example, it is something like an iPhone or an Android, you might want to make some content that talks about what is the best Android phones with the most storage capacity, for example, because it might be someone who is a filmmaker who wants to actually have something portable with them, but they want a lot of in-house memory. So you can actually show them that this particular Android phone comes with 256 gigs, but this one comes with 128. However, this one, you can actually put a micro SD card into it to expand the memory, but you can't on this one. So again, you're helping educate your customer, even though they're only at the start of their customer journey. Now again, we've talked about internal links previously, but what you can do in that blog content is actually link that particular product that you're talking about. So if that person is ready and they're at the stage where they're ready to move further down the funnel and perhaps buy in this case, well, that means that they have the link immediately on your website and you've just given them valuable content. So there's an element of trust there already for that particular buyer. Number 10 is to regularly crawl your website for errors. Now look, I'll be honest, with e-commerce websites, this can be a bit more difficult, not because it takes a lot more actual work involved, but because e-commerce websites have so many more pages than a typical website. So what you'll need to do in some cases, depending on how big your website is you might actually need to start a crawl and just let that crawl run on Screaming Frog, for example, for as long as it takes. Now, in some cases, that might be a day, two, might be a few days. Again, it depends on how long that particular crawl is going to take based on how many pages that it finds on your website. However, this is so important to do because it will help you to detect if you do have any 404s, dead links like we mentioned earlier, if there's any other issues that are occurring, perhaps if there's orphan pages that are important that should be linked somewhere, you might be able to put them in the blog content like we mentioned a moment ago. There's a few different ways that you will be able to actually use the data that you have from the crawl. Number 11 is to add FAQs that your customers are going to have about the product. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, somebody might search something such as what Android devices have the best storage capacity. Now, that could be something that you mention in the form of an FAQ on the product page itself for an Android phone. So you could have a list of FAQs at the bottom. What actually might be a better particular question in this case is, does this particular iPhone, and I'd include the name of the iPhone, or sorry, the Android phone, does this particular Android phone include storage capacity that can be expanded with a micro SD card or something along those lines? Now, that's an important question depending on the buyer. As I mentioned, they may be a filmmaker, they may want to have something portable, they may want to mess around with some 1080p or 4K portable video that they're able to get from the likes of their phone. That's going to be a very important question to them. Now, not only is that going to help with conversion, but you can also then turn that into FAQ schema markup so that that question also appears on the search results before someone's even clicked in, meaning that you're giving them even further value and knowledge about the particular product that they have an interest in before they've clicked on your website. However, when they are on your website and they see the full list of FAQs, then they know that you have all the answers that they're looking for, and they can again instill some trust into you if they're going to buy that product. Number 12 is to follow an effective URL structure. Now look, I know that depending on how some websites were built, this isn't always the easiest thing in the world to do. However, if you can, what I would highly recommend is have some structure in your URLs. As I mentioned earlier, we were talking about a few different subcategories when we actually got down to the men's black t-shirt. So we went to clothing, we went to men's clothing, then we went to men's t-shirts, and then we went to men's black t-shirts. Now look, a lot of SEOs will debate the best way to do this. In my recommendation, if it's the actual product itself, not the category, but the product of black t-shirt, men's black t-shirt, I would just have that as yourwebsite.com or whatever your URL is /men's-black-t-shirt. Now, the reason for this is because that could be put into several other categories. So what you would need to do then is make sure that the URL for the product alone is not in the categories. Now again, not all SEOs will agree on this. However, that's our particular opinion here at Launch Site Boost. Now, when you are on a category page, that's where I would have the following URL structure, such as yourdomain.com/clothing/men's clothing/t-shirts, something along those lines. Now, you do want to be careful as well that you're not shoving the same kind of keywords in there again and again and again, and you don't want to have extremely long URLs, which is another reason why we wouldn't have the actual product at the end of a longer string of subcategories or subfolders in your URL. We'd have it separately for that reason, and also because it's going to be in several other categories as well in some cases. And speaking of your category pages, that actually brings us on to section 13, and that is remember that you also need to optimize your category pages, not just your product pages. In some cases, your category pages could actually be more important for driving organic traffic and organic sales through your e-commerce website. Now, just like I mentioned with the product page where we were talking about the H1, you should also have a H1 at the very top of your category page. So if we are on the category of men's t-shirts, your H1 in this case is men's t-shirts. Now, another thing that we always like to see on e-commerce websites, and if they don't have it, we always highly recommend it, we would also say at the bottom of the page to have a small bit of content, about 300 words or so. Now, we usually split this content up in 3 different ways. We usually split it up into, as I mentioned, about 300 words. So we usually have 3 different paragraphs that all have about 100 characters each in them. However, they can also then all have their own unique H2 heading tag, which also includes some important and relevant keywords. Number 14 is to display breadcrumbs on your website. So you may have seen this on a lot of e-commerce websites because it's extremely common for an out-of-the-box e-commerce solution, and most e-commerce websites do have it. However, there is the odd few that still don't use this, and it is extremely important for SEO. So you'll usually see this at the top of a page depending on if you're on a category or if you're on a particular product. So again, let's say that you're on the men's black t-shirt. What you might see usually in the top left of a website is that you're on the men's black t-shirt page, but previously that you were actually on the t-shirt page, and before that you were on the men's clothing page, and before that you were on the clothing page. It just shows you where you are in the structure and how far down the categories that you've actually gone. That's known as your breadcrumbs, but they're all linkable and they're all very important for SEO. Now, I did mention orphan pages a moment ago, so let's actually talk about that for section 15, and that is to discover and link your orphan pages. So one way to discover these pages is, as I mentioned, by doing a crawl every month or so. Again, this depends on how big your website is, but this will allow you to find important pages that you created that you've forgotten to link from somewhere, so it means nobody can find them. Now, we did a video a while ago where we talked about a particular clothing brand where they may have had an event all about wedding dresses, but they had it during the summer. So they had a smaller sub-event within that event where people were able to also then try on summer dresses as well as wedding dresses. And they have a whole available section or a whole available range of particular summer dresses that people can buy. However, they never linked it from anywhere. So this would be the occasion where you can find that particular orphan page, which in this case is your summer dresses page, which you know is very important. You know you spend a lot of time optimizing, but you just forgot to put it in your menu navigation or link it from a blog post or that particular event news page, whatever it is at all. But it just means that it's going to help you find and discover these orphan pages so that you can link to them if they are important. Now, if you do have orphan pages that aren't important, we would recommend to set them as no index, as this will tell search engines, essentially, don't worry about this page, don't put it in your search engines. But if it is a very important page and you want it to be displayed in search engines in their search results, then you have to make sure that not only is it set to index, but it's also linked from somewhere as well. And number 16 is you can actually steal your competitors' marketing tactics. Now, there's a few different ways that you can do this. One of the favorite ways that we have here at Launch Site Boost is to literally reverse engineer the competitors using tools such as Ahrefs and Screaming Frog and Surfer and a few different tools like that. However, that's not the only way that you can do that for your on-page, your off-page, your technical SEO to see exactly what they're doing. But in some cases, your competitors may have been silly enough to actually leave their staging or development site indexable in Google. Now, we've actually seen this for people we've been working with in the past. Their competitors have actually left their staging site indexable, meaning that we can actually go onto their website and we can see exactly what they're planning to do, what new products they're planning to launch, what sales they're planning to launch, what kind of percentage that they're planning to offer for Black Friday, whatever it may be. But that's because that particular competitor has left their staging site as indexable. Now look, it's usually not the fault of the actual competitor themselves. It's usually whoever they have as a web development company or a web design agency, whatever it is that they're working with. However, that is a very common way that we can see, and not just us, but people all over the world do this because they know that a lot of people have left their staging website as indexable, meaning not only can it be found in Google, but it means that anyone, once they have the URL, can view that website without logging into it. Now, you also want to have a look at what particular backlinks your competitors have as well. Now, we would use Ahrefs for that, and that actually brings us nicely onto the next section because you want to reverse engineer the backlinks that your competitors have. So if there's a particular keyword that you're trying to rank for, again, we'll use the example of men's black t-shirt, and you're on page 2 of Google, but all of your main competitors are on page 1. Using the likes of Ahrefs, we can actually see not only the backlinks, but the amount of unique referring domains that all of your competitors have. Now, it doesn't just give us a number, we actually have the ability to dive deeper into that and find not only the exact websites that are linking to your competitors, but the exact URL where those competitors are mentioned and the exact anchor text that those particular competitors are mentioned also. So this will help you to have a better understanding of what kind of links that you need to earn and also what kind of anchor text ratio you should be using if you also want to rank on page 1. Now, number 18 is not too much of a common issue these days, but because it's something we still see a lot, we thought we'd mention it, and that is to make sure that your SSL certificate is kept up to date. Now, your SSL certificate is that green little padlock that appears to let you know that the website that you're on is safe. So that means that someone knows when they see that green padlock that if they're to enter their credit card details onto that particular e-commerce site, that it is 100% safe, that it's not a fake website, that the website won't be hacked, that there's a lot of security put in place for the trust and security of that particular customer. Now, there's a lot of cases where people don't automatically update their SSL certificate, and then you'll actually see a warning from the likes of Google Chrome, if you use that as a browser, to say this website's not secure. Now, if you manage to actually land on a website and it says this website's not secure, most people are going to just bounce off and go straight to your competitors. So you need to make sure that your SSL certificate is constantly up to date so that anyone who lands on your website knows that it's safe to go ahead and make a purchase. And section 19 is to use the holidays to your advantage. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? Well, if you're also doing a lot of email collecting for your list, so you might have a newsletter or a 10% discount for the people who are using their first purchase or whatever it might be, just some sort of lead magnet to start building an email list, you should always make sure that you have something for those people during the holidays, whether it be a sale or whatever it might be. Now, you might think, well, there's not really that much opportunity throughout the year to do something like that, is there? But if you think about it, pretty much every single month has something. So you could start with a Happy New Year's sale, then you can move on to Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, then there's Easter, then there's the summer holidays, and then we're coming into, all sorts of other things throughout the year. And then we're moving further down into the likes of Halloween and Christmas and Black Friday and Thanksgiving. And it just, the list goes on, on. And pretty much everyone these days that's on Facebook, they see that every single day now is happy this day, happy that day. So there's a holiday basically for every single day, but use the main holidays that everyone knows and the majority of people celebrate, or the majority of your customers would celebrate, and actually let them know that you have something for them, or even if you don't have a sale, just send them something to say, happy Thanksgiving from us. Hope all's well with the family. Have a great time, whatever it may be. So again, you're just keeping your brand in their mind. So they may not be ready to buy something now, but when it does come to it, well, then they know who to go to. And last but not least, at number 20 is to measure your positive results in Google Analytics. Now, this is one where people can fall down quite a lot because unless you review the data, you don't actually know what's working for you and what's not working. You don't know what particular pages people are landing on your website, what's actually driving conversions, and what particular categories in some cases are actually giving you the most revenue for your business. Now, Google Analytics is free, so it does not make sense to not have it on your website. And you can also set up e-commerce goals with Google Analytics as well. So you can see not only what somebody purchased, but the amount that somebody actually spent on the website. You can see a particular day. You can compare it to this day last month. If you actually ran a particular campaign this year for, let's say, Black Friday, and you didn't do something last Black Friday, you can say, right, let's compare the sales from this Black Friday to last Black Friday, and we can see how we did, whatever it may be. But reviewing that data is so important, and it helps you to make critical decisions in your business to grow even more so that you can further boost your organic websites and organic sales. So there you have it. That was 20 different things that you can do on your e-commerce website in order to boost sales and to draw in more organic visitors to your website, therefore increasing the organic revenue that your website is producing for the business. If you do have any questions or comments, as always, please do leave them down in the comment section below, as we do our very best to reply to each and every single one of them. But hopefully you got a bit of value from this video. As I mentioned, I'll end the video here, and hopefully you have a good day. I'll speak again soon. Bye.